right, welcome. Hello, everybody. I see that people are joining, so let's wait a few minutes so that everybody can join, and then we can kick it off. Okay, it's 3 minutes after 4 p.m. So I think we can start. Before that, let me first send. We are actually sending the support to our Ukrainian friends. I hope that you guys, you and your family, are staying safe. Because remember, like safety first. Going back to the webinar, once again, welcome to the first, to our first Tech Talks, Oro Tech Talks that we are kicking off. Me and Andrei, we have a pleasure to start the first series, and we will be talking about the tech changes in 5.0. So basically everything that relates to the technical standpoint of the changes in the application and also in the stack. And then I will be talking about the upgrade process itself, so how to start with it and how to handle that. Andrei, I think you can take it over and start with your part.
Okay, hello everyone. So basically we have two topics for today, technical changes and the upgrade process. My part is the technical changes in 5.0 LTS release that we just released a month ago, and here I want to showcase all the things that we changed basically in this version and what we improved for developers. And this part is for developers first, so I will overview all the things, the most important things that we were working on during this last year. And we had improvements all over the system because we wanted to make the system better for you developers first, and also we upgraded the stack to have longer support. So first we upgraded the PHP version, so now the minimum PHP version is 8.1. Also we upgraded Postgres, Elasticsearch, and Node.js versions, and here actually for developers nothing special was changed, but now after an upgrade you have a longer support cycle for this version. So if you upgrade to Postgres 13.5, you will get a lifetime period for this service for a long enough time without changing the version during the LTS release life cycle for 5.0. And we also upgraded Node.js Webpack to the next version. So there was some changes in the configuration, but if you don't have any customization of the configurations, then almost nothing was changed for you. If you had some changes in the Webpack config.js file in the application root directory, then there are some changes that you can check. Basically, all these versions are well highlighted in release notes on the specific provider website. So like with the Webpack, you can go to the Webpack website and see what's new in 5.0 version, what configs should you change. Some plugins are unsupported anymore, so you should switch to new plugins and so on. And basically that's it. And the same for all the services that we're using. We also upgraded Symfony to the next LTS version. This was a major upgrade for us because Symfony increased the PHP versions, so there were many changes in signatures, especially in return types, and there were many changes in the libraries, and we had to remove some libraries from our dependencies and start using forks and so on. And we also upgraded Twig to the third version. The second version of Twig is still supported, but as we want to use the latest features in our templates and minimize the upgrade effort in next releases, we decided to upgrade Twig as well. There were not many changes for Twig designers. Mainly it's for developers who extend Twig but not who use the Twig. And the thing that I want to notice here is that we added the requirements checks during the application installation or an upgrade. So when you start an upgrade process, or if you install the new application version 5.0, then you see more strict requirements checks like different versions of Postgres are not allowed, while the application itself actually can work with the older version, but we limited the support on the application level. And this limitation is done using requirements provider interface. This is the interface that add some checks during this installation or upgrade process, and actually all the checkers, all the requirements providers, they are defined as services. So you can disable some services and you can override them. So if, for instance, for some reason you want to start using the application on an older version of Postgres, it's not officially supported, but you still can do this by overriding the requirements provider and use it at your own risk if it's really crucial for you. So this part is also extensible enough, and you can work around it if you need. The main change was the PHP version upgrade, as the previous version used 7.4 to 8 version, and now we have the minimum version 8.1. So you can go to the official PHP website and all the changes actually highlighted there. I'm not going to go through the changes, new features. You can check them there, and there are many articles all over the internet about new features and how to work with them. Basically, for us, this upgrade was mostly about the types, as we don't use much strict types in the application itself. There are many places where we have typecasting, like we have null and then it's converted to string, for instance, for the username and so on. And this conversion, this typecasting now doesn't work as before because PHP itself added many type checks to the language itself, like the trim function, the standard function that trims string now applies only strings. Before you were able to send there an array, null or other types, and it was converted to string, but now you have to pass there only the string. So there were we added many checks to the code to not allow using these unsupported types that worked before without issues. And it helped us to find a few issues in the business logic. So it's beneficial, but it requires a lot of work if you customize something and PHP itself changed a lot of types in the language, and most of the libraries that we upgraded also added more strict types to the library itself, as the newer PHP version support in most cases meant the major version upgrade. Library owners decided to add more types like argument types or return types to all the interfaces, and this is the first thing that you have to work on during the upgrade. And PHP itself also says that there were many performance improvements, and we actually use them now, but from the uh, benchmarks that we have, the performance improvement was not that significant. But as we support only one version of PHP now, it's much easier for our support team to go longer with the release, to backmerge patches for all the issues that we find, and it's much easier to test, and it's much easier for you to work with it, because there is only one PHP version. We are not going to support multiple PHP versions for this release. And as we upgraded the PHP version, the first things that we met were the list of dependencies that are not compatible with the new PHP version. First, we switched from the Swift mailer to the Symfony mailer because actually Swift mailer is deprecated and it's not recommended to use. So now everywhere we use only the Symfony mailer, the recommended approach. The same with GMS serializer bundle. We removed it from our code base, and now we use Symfony serializer wherever needed. And the next library is Lexic maintenance bundle that we use for the maintenance mode. We also moved, we forked basically this dependency. We moved some interfaces to our code base, and now it's fully supported by Oro. And the last library that we removed was LDAP library from Laminas, and we switched to Symfony LDAP for Enterprise Edition. So now it's it has much better support, because Laminas vendor said that, for instance, this new version that we started using in the release candidate is compatible with PHP 8.1, but actually they had no tests with this version and it was broken. So we decided to use more reliable version, as we already have Symfony vendor in our dependency. It's more beneficial for us. Also, some libraries for some libraries, we haven't found alternatives like Akineo batch bundles that we use all over the integrations. So we created a fork and we refactored it a bit to remove the dead code and the interfaces that were not beneficial for us. Also, we forked Nailmio API doc bundle. There is a new version that actually supports PHP 8.1, but we decided to stay with the older version and fork it to add PHP 8.1 support, just because the new version of this bundle is actually changed almost everything, and it was a huge backward compatibility break. So we decided to not waste time on an upgrade, but we forked the dependency of the older version and added PHP 8.1 support there. And we are planning to support open API standard in further versions. So probably we will remove these dependencies at all, or we'll use the new version, but it will be another backward compatibility break that we decided to not do in this version. And we also switched to the Ocramius Proxy Manager fork from Friends of PHP that just has longer support. There is nothing really important. There were also many significant changes for the storefront. First, we worked a lot on the performance itself, and we optimized lighthouse marks for the desktop and mobile website for all the main pages. There were changes in the backend part and in the JavaScript and styles. We also shrinked HTML as much as we can. So we have much better marks for Lighthouse from Google. And now websites could have higher position in Google search. Also, we worked on the Americans with Disabilities Act standard for accessible design. It's also called ADA compliant standard. Basically, the storefront in OroCommerce now fully compliant with this standard. There is a keyboard navigation. It's compatible with major screen readers and so on. But you should note that it works out of the box, but whenever you customize the layout, you should also pay attention to this. If you want your website to be compatible with the standard, to make it be accessible for screen readers and other devices for disabled people, then this is the thing that you should check as well. And we added support for the WebP compression standard for images. Basically, now all the images are wrapped with the picture tag, HTML tag, and there are many different, there are actually two different presets for the image, JPEG, that is used when WebP is not supported, but it's now most of the browsers support WebP. You can actually disable generation of JPEGs and use only WebP if you don't have to support older browsers, and it reduces the network traffic and the disk space used by images for about 30%, as I remember. Also, we improved the development flow for the front-end developers. First, as we decided to not support Internet Explorer 11 anymore, we dropped Bubble. We actually disabled Bubble. You can still enable it back if you want to work with older browsers. It's still configurable within the YAML configuration. You can find the documentation how to enable it back if you want to work with older browsers. But for Internet Explorer 11, we had a lot of tricks that we removed from the code. So now enabling back Bubble and declaring that you support Internet Explorer in the browser list RC is not enough. Some features will not work anymore because we decided to drop the support, as actually Microsoft also doesn't support it anymore. The next thing that we done was replacement of Node SAS. This is the library that is used for pre-processing SAS files for styles, and now we use the version that is called Dart SAS. This is the official version. It strictly follows the SAS standard, and it also has all the new features support. And for the front-end developers, it's mostly about the features that are incompatible with features in CSS, like there is the same character for divide operation in CSS and SAS, but in the official SAS they fixed it, so now it's easier to understand when the operation will be executed in CSS itself, like some calculations in the CSS, or during the compilation in SAS side. So it actually simplified some styles and allowed us to find some issues in the build itself, because it's more strict standard and it's the official one. It's written in JavaScript, and now you don't have to download binaries like it was for Node SAS. So it's a bit slower, but not significantly. And as we have better support, we can go further with improving this feature usage in core, and you can use all the new features in the services project as well. Also, we refactored the way the admin theme styles are built. So before, if you want to customize the admin theme, you had to override about 15 files just to change the color, because the color was declared as a variable, but this variable was local and was declared in like 15 files. Now you can change all the colors and other settings from the admin theme from any file. Basically, the build works the same way as it worked for the storefront, and all the variables are global now in SaaS build. So if you want to override just colors or logo or whatever in the admin theme, you don't have to override all the files, just work with variables, and it's enough to have only one file. So for instance, in the default application in UI bundle, we have the theme for admin that is called demo. You can find it in UI bundle resource public themes demo folder, and there were like 15 files, and now there are only 2 files for the styles changes to change the color schema for the admin part. So it's much more simplified. And also we added support for the separate JavaScript build for the landing pages. It means that you can have a separate JavaScript build, actually JavaScript file entry point that is used only on some landing page, and it doesn't load the original large JavaScript files that is used in all other pages. It's really hard to support this customization, but if you have a landing page that have to work with only small parts of the JavaScript, you don't have to load the whole JavaScript that is used on the storefront there, then you can work with this build, and there is a documentation on how to make separate build for the marketing pages if you want to. The next big thing that we actually changed in the application was about entities. First, we added the validation for all the configurations on the entity and entity field levels, and we documented all the options. So before, if you worked with annotations for the entity like config or config field annotation, or when you added fields or tables in migrations, there you worked with Oro options, and it was hard to understand what options are there, what are they for, and it was easy to make a mistake, some typo, and application worked with these mistakes without any notices. So the feature just didn't work as expected. But now, as this configuration is strictly validated, you can always see the correct errors that says, like, if you execute the migration and in this migration you try to set the option that is not defined, or the option value type is not supported, then you see exact error just after this migration, and you understand where to fix it sooner, and it's really helpful during development. And all the options are documented in the developer documentation portal at the configuration reference. Also, we finally changed the storage type for the serialized fields. So as you know, serialized fields was stored in the database in a separate column in the PHP serialized array that was encoded with base 64. Now it's just plain JSON, and it's the JSON-B in Postgres. So at first we just changed the way these fields are stored, but in patch releases we are going to add operations on these fields. Like you will be able to add a serialized field that is not a table column, just a field in this array, and this field will work on data grids during sorting or filtering, and for most of the product attributes, you will be able to create serialized fields instead of standard table columns, and it's really beneficial for e-commerce projects. But now we just changed the storage type. All the other things around this feature are going to be introduced in patch releases. And to simplify the setup for multi-node environment, we changed the way serialized field works on the code level. So as you know, we have code generation for extend entities, and in cache, every time when you add or remove a field in an entity, we have files that are changed in cache. Now, if you work only with serialized fields, then nothing is changed. Nothing is changed in the cache. We have a trait that is reused all over the entities, and it uses magic PHP methods to access the properties and to set values there. So basically, if you work with serialized fields from the code in your customization, you work with them as with regular public fields in entities without setters or getters, and these are magic fields, so they don't need code generation, and it simplifies the setup for multi-node environment. After we will fix other issues with it. Yeah. Also, we removed a few parameters from the dependency injection container. The first one is a really tricky parameter called installed. When your application installed in previous version, you had to set this parameter to true, and when it's not installed, to false. And it was always an issue when someone restored the database on a new instance, then ran Oro platform update, for instance, and then started the web server and sees that application is not installed. Yeah, so you have to go to the parameters YAML, change the value, reload the cache, and so on. And as it was a really big issue and that many developers wasted time, we decided to remove this parameter, and now application relies on the service that knows whether the application is installed or not, and the state is stored in the database, so you don't have to manage it manually anymore. It's set automatically during the installation. And also we removed parameters from the containers that were responsible for asset version for the JavaScript and style assets. So whenever you build dependencies, first you had to run composer install operation to update the parameters file, YAML file, then clear the cache, and then only rebuild JavaScript dependencies. Now you still have to run composer script that change the asset version, but as it's not stored anymore in the container, we moved it to the simple text file in the public folder. You don't have to, so now you don't have to change the application cache. So you change the file, the text file, by running composer command, and then you can just rebuild assets without touching the application container. The next thing that we changed was message queue. We added the validation for all the bodies whenever we can do this. So now when you send message to the queue, you see the validation error if there is a typo, but this validation is optional. So if you had some message queue processors and topics defined in your applications, then you can leave them as is during the upgrade and don't worry. But if you want to make more strict validation, you can add it. We also improved the search by decreasing the website search index size, and we added the new feature that is called saved search. So users can save their search results and get notification when these lists are changed. And we ported the product attributes boost extension to the core. Now you can manipulate search results more precise by setting boost for product attributes. And we also ported the layout render cache to the core. So this was the extension that allows you to cache part of the page like an HTML. So this is the HTML cache that is implemented on the layout part, and now it's part of the core. So you can enable it, for instance, to cache the whole landing page for the anonymous users, and it will work much faster without almost any database requests and so on. There were also many improvements for the import performance, and now it's reliable and fast. So when you increase the number of consumers, performance also is improved. Before we had issues with the number of attributes and with scaling import operations. So now it's much faster and more reliable. And we also upgraded our test suite to be ready for PHP Unit 10. We changed a few extension vendors for beheads to get Symfony support, and we added behead test support for end-to-end testing. It means that you can test with behead tests the application that is removed, for instance, without connecting to the database, without isolating cache and other services. So you can test deployed application with behead test by running the test framework over the remote website. And this feature is also documented. It's all others. This is basically all from my side. There were many features. I just overviewed the main changes for developers. You can go deeper by reading the documentation. All the features are documented. They are also mentioned in the release notes for the 5.0 release. There are links for the commits with all the details where you can see how they are implemented. And in all the applications and Oro packages, we have upgrade MD files that you can check to see how to upgrade your application. For instance, which services were changed and which bundles had more changes. This is all from my side. I stop sharing the screen. And yeah. Daniel, it's your turn. Let me.
Thank you, Andrei. Just one sec. I'll set up my slides. And just in case, Andrei, there are some questions on our QA tab, if you are able to answer that.
Okay, I'll check.
Okay, guys, so you should be able to see my screen. And let me start. So basically, Andrei talked about the changes in 5.0. So it was like related to the specific version of the Oro, while I will be talking more generic about the upgrade, about the upgrade process, about the benefits, the efforts, so how to estimate the upgrade and how to perform it, like step by step. Okay. And the idea for this presentation is to have it structured in a way that we have a user story, kind of like a user story, where first we will try to work with the business on convincing them on the upgrade. So we will talk about the benefits of the upgrade, that it comes with new features, stability, security, and so on. Then we will talk about the estimation. So I will show you a methodology that we are using in Oro. And then we will talk about the process. So what tools or the tricks we are using for the upgrade itself. So basically the first question and the first thing that you'll be struggling with would be to convince the client, right? So you will get the why question. If it works fine, my application works perfectly fine. It fulfills the requirements. It helps with the organization processes. So why should we even bother upgrading the system? I will talk about a few groups of the benefits, and obviously, like every single application and every single project has its own benefits, and it has its own domain that it is operating in. However, there are some common benefits, like features and enhancements. With every single version, especially major version, we introduced some new functionalities. And one of that was the one that Andrew mentioned, for example, Safe Search in 5.0, in 4.2, in 3.1, we had a lot of the new functionalities or enhancements of the application that might be beneficial, and not only for the business, right? And not only for the employees for the client itself, but also for the customers. So the place where you should start would probably be a release notes. So with every single version, we list all of the, not all of them, obviously, but we show the key changes in 5.0, in 4.2. We listed here. So this is going to be kind of like your job to convince the client to gather the list of new functionalities, new enhancements, and talk with them directly to actually start the upgrade. It's not only about the new features, but it's also about possibility to simplify processes. And one of that might be hypothetical situation where we have integration with 365, right? So Microsoft 365, where when the client is working in like two places, by integrating the 365, and this is what we did in 5.0, they are actually able to simplify processes. So it's not only new features, but also simplification of the processes. The next thing is obviously stability and robustness with every single version and major version. And this is actually what Andre mentioned, really described really in a really detailed way. You have latest version of the related libraries, frameworks, Symfony, Doctrine. You saw the Node.js, Elasticsearch, PHP, sorry. And this is all to keep the system healthy. We as software developers or the people responsible for the software should always aim to keep the system healthy in order to not allow any vulnerabilities or our systems to be vulnerable to any potential threats. With the new versions, you also have less technical debt. So like by upgrading the code, obviously you kind of like you're not left behind in a way that the new version comes, the new version appears, and then you are still on like 3 or 4 versions behind. What is most important though is the active maintenance. So we have, according to our release process and release schedule, LTS versions. So it was 4.1, 4.2, now it's 5.0, that you have the active maintenance kind of like supported for the given version. So we have the maintenance, the support maintenance, and the security maintenance in terms of the LTS versions too. And speaking about security, or speaking about the security maintenance, we all know how important that is. The recent case with Log4j showed us that it is really worth upgrading and keeping the system up to date, because once the vulnerability exposed, the software may really be hit by that potential vulnerability and potential threats. Fortunately, we do not have Log4j, so it's not our case. But we all know how that happened and how that affected the whole IT world. And it's not only like those kind of like small businesses, small softwares, but also pretty big organization. And by preparing to this webinar, I checked the interesting metrics or interesting article about a few most expensive data breaches, because security is not, like security obviously is very important, but for the business, they need to balance that, right? Why should we invest in the security while we really need to have new features? We really need to simplify our processes. So of course, security is important, but let's put it on site and let's invest more in the new enhancements. So by preparing to this webinar, I checked a few of the most expensive ones, and the most expensive one was Epsilon, which costs like 4 billion. This not potential breach, but this breach was estimated to cost around 4 billion, which is pretty high figure, pretty high number. Or those two that are listed below, you probably know them: Sony PlayStation or Uber, that cost almost 150 million in average. So potential breach can cost a lot, and the business needs to understand that, right? It is your role to convince the business. However, this is really important, and you need to be aware of that as well. And the last but not least is the performance. We saw in the previous part how we invested in the performance, and usually this is also a case where with every single new upgrade you have a performance boost. And again, a very interesting article or study shows that even though OroCommerce is a B2B framework and we are all working in the B2B world, B2B e-commerce world, we see more expectations from B2C. Why? Because 60% of all B2B tech buyers are millennials right now. So, like they were grown with technology from the very beginning. So they are used to that. They are used to the experience that they will also demand or expect from the B2B applications as well. So I'm not saying that if page load is too high, visitors will definitely leave, but that this might be sometimes a case, especially when you have a lot of competitors here. So let's assume you convince the client. Let's assume that we are, the client has agreed that this is important thing. The upgrade is our next priority. So then what? Then the next question that you will probably get is how much, right? And this is perfectly valid question. This is the question that you will most likely have. So what is the effort behind the upgrade? Or in other words, how much does that cost? And here you can this is a tough one, right? Because especially when you're doing that for the first time, how could you answer that, right? The answer is like, I don't know, right? Like how to assess the effort. I do not recommend answering I don't know. You need to find a way to estimate the upgrade, even though you have never done it before. So instead of kind of like trying to totally guess it without any significant or any approach, you can either have a detailed analysis of the code, so analyze what are the changes, all of these things that Andrei mentioned, right? So to analyze, to check the entity serialized fields, how that affects your application, like all of those detailed analysis on every single part of the application, but it will take a lot of time. On the other hand, you can guess it, right? Obviously not just like that and just tell the number, but like there are some metrics that could be used based on the history if you have done it, or some other clients if you have more than one. If it's your first time, then maybe you have a velocity charts or some burn down charts. So there are some metrics that you can use. You know how your team performs. You know how fast your team delivers functionality. So you can kind of like assess based on that. But anyway, this can be shot in the dark, right? You don't really know whether this is a reliable estimate or not. And like everything is fine when you have like one upgrade, right? You have one application that you're working, or one client that you're like focused on, and you are maintaining this one. But in Oro we have a bit more than one. And sometimes, like we have different clients, different teams, different approaches. But sometimes it was really, really hard, especially when, like we are supporting also partners. So sometimes we don't know the code base, but we were asked to help with estimating the upgrade or estimating the effort. So the idea here was to use some help. And by help, I mean a tool that we could use, or the approach that you can use to assess the effort. And we sat down and we thought about the static code analysis. And the static code analysis still, like, this is some kind of metric that you can base your estimates on. However, like it's still hard to incorporate that, to use it. So the idea here is to first raw estimate potential issues. So for instance, in one of the versions we changed Require.js to Webpack. In current version, we also have a lot of the changes that Andrew described. So I don't know, or some other like issues, maybe not issues, but the things that could be potential issues, like controllers as a service, or old version of PHP. Maybe you have some refactored bundle in Oro, so you changed the way how the Oro bundle or the core functionality works. So you know that, and those might be like potential issues that you the pain points that you raw estimate first, and then focusing on estimating the effort of upgrading every bundle to kind of like sum it up or add it up, and then having the final number, the final figure that you can pass to the client. You can tell the client how much that will cost. But again, you can still it's gonna be like a mixed approach, detailed and guessed, right? Because the guessed approach is that you totally guess. The detailed, you go every line by line on every part of the application, and you check it. So you can marry the two, and kind of like use that particular approach. However, it's gonna be still long. It may take hours, right? So like even though the static code analysis might be used here, how to use it, right? With every single bundle, what if I have like 100 bundles, right? It will take hours. It is boring, it is long. And we are all lazy developers, and in that good meaning, lazy meaning that, finding a way how to automate or how to, like make it a bit more quickly. So one of that approach, one of that methodology that we have chosen was to count line of codes. And again, like having that line of code, number of line of code still is kind of like, this is, okay, I have like 100, not 100, but 3,000 lines of PHP in my bundle. What does that mean? Will that take like 3 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours? You don't know. But using the tool that I'm showing you right now, there is a script that is able to calculate those line of codes. And using some relative numbers for every single bundle, that you have. So just as a wrap up, we have potential issues and we have the bundles. So using relative numbers for the bundles, we can kind of like assess what the effort might be. But again, what does that mean that the bundle is small or the bundle is large, right? What could be the factor that we should use? And here I listed a few key factors for the methodology, for our methodology. First is complexity. So how big is the project? Is it like 100 bundles, 3 bundles? Maybe it's just like a slightly customized application, just a few, a theme change, and that's it. And you're using the core functionalities. How deeply your customizations affect the Oro core logic. Then, and this is very important, most important, code quality. How many services you have overridden? How many JS components? Maybe you change the routing, controllers, templates, layout updates. By overriding those elements of Oro, you increase the potential effort of the bundle. If you have a new bundle, like a completely new bundle, even though you have like 10,000 line of codes, it means that it won't take a lot of time. But at the same time, if you have a small bundle with just a few customizations, but at the same time you overridden like, the way how pricing works, you most likely will have some issues while upgrading. And also the third group of those factors is risky components. And I thought, I was thinking what to put here, and I thought about a few of them that I find or we find risky. Checkout together with the workflow, right? And we all know whoever was upgrading or whoever was changing the workflow knows that it might be a tricky part because of the debugging issue. Then pricing, because of the architecture of the pricing. Which increased actually the quality of the architecture is much simpler, starting 4.1 or 4.2. Shopping list, product, and taxes. So whenever you're changing those or changing the original behavior, you might expect challenges while upgrading. And I'm not saying that you will have those like challenges, but you might. And of course, patches. The more you patch, the more patches you are using, the more challenges you may face during the upgrade. And like even though we have a script for that, I thought that okay, but it is just a script. It is a shell script. So how to approach that? How to do that? And I was thinking about how to visualize that. So I kind of like created a template for the bundles, for the PHP files, JavaScript, tweak, YAML files, and the effort. So here we can like put all of the bundles, right, just one by one, provide the statistics, the code, static code analysis, in this case, line of codes, and then estimating the effort using the relative numbers. But again, it's still something that is really relative. It's subjective, right? This is you who is like responsible for that. But again, we are lazy, right? So by doing that one by one, it will take us a lot. So I created a simple command for that, which, by the way, I open source. It is in my Gist, so feel free to go to Gist, GitHub, and my D and my surname to see the estimate clock command. It is a very simple command. It just iterates over and I will show you how that works in action. That just operates in a given path, right? So this is my command, estimate clock, with providing the path. This is, I use the vendor, right? Because I'm using fresh install of 4.2 to show you that command, and output that to the CSV file. So by doing that, that command automatically iterates over every single bundle, processing that, and calculates the number of the line of codes grouped by PHP, JavaScript, tweak, and so on. So let us wait a bit for that. It prints also that particular statistics, but at the same time, we also have it in the output in the CSV. So we can Nautilus open the results. Yes, okay. Okay, let me copy just a few to show you. It's just to show the demo, and then paste it in the template so that you can maybe scroll it up a bit. So that you can, based on those statistics, estimate whether this is like a extra small, or maybe this is medium, large, and it calculates, the potential effort. This is just a template, and I need to speed up a bit because we're about 5 p.m. already. So this is a real example of one of our projects. We have a lot of that. Git link on the chat. Yes, I will share that link soon. So basically, you have the bundles. We saw what are the potential issues with those bundles. So for example, YAML code, a lot of YAML code might mean that you have a lot of the services overridden, and actually that was a case. Huge checkout modifications. Here we have overridden services, like those kind of comments that might be important in terms of the upgrade. And at the end, you have the number that, again, guys, this is still like not this is not a number that will definitely be accurate, but at least you have something that you can work on. So, and guys, excuse me, but I need to really speed up. So those numbers, right? Those numbers you kind of like you processed. This is the time that you will spend on the upgrade, and assuming you have a green light from the client, what to do next? So here again, like we do not have just like one single approach how to do the upgrades, because this is it depends on many factors, like of your project, of your structure of the files, of your structure of the bundles, of the functionalities of the PHP that you're using, and so on. But here we will try to answer the question how, and the real how, not how much. So here we will show you how we do that. And first, the typical task. In order to properly plan the upgrade, you have the estimate already, but the thing to plan, the process that usually consists of a few typical tasks. So the first one is to upgrade the project setup. And by upgrading project setup, I mean system or the project requirements. And that it's not only about the PHP or that, like all of these system requirements, but also project. And here I have, there is a nice command that you probably know. This is Oro platform update, but without force. So when you run it without force, right? Because when you run it with force, it will upgrade my application. When you run it without force, the system or the Oro platform will check the system requirements. So I will do a trick and I will change or downgrade the node version that I'm using. And I know that 4.2 expects me or requires node 12. And when I run it, well, not this one, but this one, then I will see that I have an error and we should switch Node.js to version 12 or 14. So again, that might help you with that, checking the requirements. Then if there are any project structure changes, like for example, we had web or app directories in 2.6 versus public directories or var directories in 3.1. So all of those more system require or kind of like more not yet application changes, they are here, right? So here the goal is that the project is installable by using the Oro install. Why? Because in the Oro upgrade, when you are upgrading the platform, you have the existing values in database, you have the existing projects. So there are like things that you should be aware of and that you should carefully migrate. Migrations, entity serialized fields, like Andriy mentioned. So in the second task, you need to upgrade the dependencies. you need to bump up the extensions that you are using or make them fully compatible with your version of the project. Then think about all of those existing values in the database and, like handle that somehow. And here, guys, the very important thing is to create a database dump before you start upgrading the process. Then, of course, while you have the structure ready, while you have the upgrade ready, you can start working with the upgrade of each of the bundles separately. And this is a good place where you can split the work between all of your dev team members, because you can focus on only one single or few bundles separately. Then front end, just guys, remember about including front end buffer in your upgrade because of the changes to the theme, to the layout, to the CSS, right? For example, OroCore changes the CSS from display block to display flex for some of the elements, and then it changes the way how your theme now looks like, right? And this is like hypothetical case, but again, that happens a lot. Front-end adjustments might take you a while. Don't forget also about staging and production preparation, especially when you are migrating few versions at once. So for example, from 2.6 to 5.0 or from 4.1 to 5.0, right? So you're skipping one version. Just remember about including the buffer for that as well. Tests adoption, I hope that guys, all of your projects have tests, unit tests, functional tests, BHAT tests that Andrew mentioned as well. We have improvements in, it should be covered. So also include some buffer for the test adoption because of especially BHATs, right? Because BHATs expect the elements, the position by the XPath to be in some specific places. When this place is changed, right? When for example, the widget has changed completely, you might need to adapt the tests. And of course, regression, and one more time regression. That part might also take you a while. Okay, so those were the typical tasks. So how to deal with the system requirements. And guys, here again, laziness. So try to guys automate the thing, and especially when you are using a lot of with a lot of the projects with various versions. So for example, with the version 3.1, 4.1, 4.2, 5.0, don't forget about easy way of switching the PHP or the components. So for example, I have the commands to switch the PHP, right? For 7.4 to 8.1, right? So this is for that version. It's really useful. Then let me change it back to 7.4. Then Node, right? You saw the Node version manager already. You can have multiple versions installed and then use some specific version at a time. In this case, I'm using version 10, but I can use, for example, 12, switch it like that, and it is here. So it is being supported. Elasticsearch, do not kind of like install that separately from the repositories, but you can have like a different versions that you can execute using the bin binaries that are provided with that. And I know, guys, that some of you might have Docker, Vagrant, or any provision tools that you are using, but again, if you're not using that, try to automate things. Then code, again, create DB dumps. Create scripts for creating dump, create scripts for recreating your application from the database dump, and only then start working on the upgrade. This is really crucial. You need to have a database dump, because otherwise, when you start working on the upgrade and you mess it up, then the database most likely will be in the state that you cannot recover from anymore. And speaking about how to deal with deal with the changes, you can use GitHub compare. So for example, I'm comparing here versions 4.2.9 to 5.0. Here you have the file changes. So you have kind of like the idea of what is being changed here. But to be honest, I don't like it. So I know this is like, one way of doing stuff, But what I do and what I really like or prefer to doing while when I am upgrading is to set up clean version of the application. So for example, I'm upgrading from 4.2 to 5.0. Let me see, where am I? Here. So what I do is I install a fresh version of the 5.0 just next to it, or just cloning. I don't need to install it, just clone it. And then I'm using PHP compare with to compare, like you could compare the whole project, but I have node modules installed, public, var, because this is working environment. So I will focus only on one directory. You can use like one by one, or use the GitHub compare to show you in which directories we have some changes. Then you can click compare with, find the Commerce 5.0, so the application that I'm upgrading to, click compare. You have a visual representation of what exactly has changed. On the right, we have 5.0, on the left, we have 4.2. And then, of course, not blindly, but analyzing what are you doing, you need to merge, or I am merging those changes, right? So obviously I have fresh versions of this application, so it's easier for me. But like it shows what you need to do, and you don't need to copy that from GitHub, but you can do it just right directly in your IDE. So we are simplifying processes. Then you saw the changes. You are doing that for the other. Of course, the most important one is composer.json, so that you can compare with. Then use the composer.json of the 5.0, and you see what were the changes. You are merging them, you are adapting, because this is like your live project, so you're adapting those changes, and then you are free to start upgrade. Right? You always have database dump, so you can revert back to the first stage, and like always. And another nice thing that we are already, guys, 10 minutes behind the schedule, but I would really like to show you just one more thing. So let me be really quick. This one. I am now pretending that I have some undefined classes, right? And you will have that while you are upgrading. For example, doctrine, contracts has changed, or interfaces have changed. So then instead of doing that one by one and checking that, you can go to where was that code, if I'm not mistaken, analyze code, run inspection by name. It is undefined class. Here, let me do it once again. Code, analyze code, run inspection by name, undefined class in the directory source. Okay. And here I have only one that I have undefined classes, but in your case, you will have a lot of them that are of similar errors, right? So for example, undefined class doctrine manager, because it changed the interface to contract or to whatever, to the common. So by using this approach, you simplify again the processes and the changes. And like you need to, of course, adapt, doing that one by one, and trying to see the changes, in the atomic approach. Try to not do everything at once, but try to do the baby steps, right? So one bundle, then another bundle, then check the backend if it's working, then check the frontend if it's working, and so on. And very last thing, best practices from our end, always keep the release plan. So there are many things that you need to do while doing the upgrade. For example, recreate indexes, or adding something, or manually updating some command, or like those kind of things that are necessary for the staging and production as well. So keep it in the release plan, keep it in the one a place where you have an easy way of executing those things. Next, tests. Guys, cover your applications with tests, because like especially Behat tests saved us a lot of time already. clean up, remove as much as possible because you're using the opportunity to refactor while in the upgrade, but not in a single run. So for example, first upgrade and check that the pricing is working in the same way that you expect that to work, and only then refactor that. We also did it a few times, and it works pretty neat, pretty good. And probably this is the most important thing. Avoid overriding services, avoid overriding layouts and JS components. Try to use composition over inheritance. Because otherwise you will be still, like we introduce compatibility breaks in the major version. So try to eliminate the risk and try to mitigate the risk by simply writing a clean code. And automation for the win. I showed you DevTools. I really like using that, especially when you have repetitive tasks that you need to do a lot. And baby steps. I already told you about that. Guys, unfortunately, for the QA, please, we do not have like a lot of time for answering the questions. However, for those that still have time and we can spend like 5 minutes, I will check the chat tab, but I don't think there are many of them. Andrew, had you had a chance to?
I think that I answered most of them, but guys,
Perfect.
if you still have questions, please join our Slack channel. This is the invite link that you can just type and ask there in any chat related to the product that you are using. I'm always there to help, and also we have a great community and people like to share their use cases, so you will definitely find their support and all the answers.
Thank you, Andrea. And yeah, the presentation, the recording, and the slides will be sent to you in a follow-up email. So you will get all of those links to the comments or to the templates as well. All right. So guys, again, thank you very much. I hope that you're now convinced. I hope you know how to convince the client. And yeah, see you at the second tech talk. Will be done in a few months, I guess. Thank you and take care. Bye bye.